Welcome to Sparks of History. We are extremely pleased to have with us today Rabbi Chaim Strauchler. Rabbi Strauchler received his Bachelors in English Literature from Yeshiva College and earned a Diploma in Theology and a Master's degree in Religious Studies from Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar. Rabbi Strauchler holds a Master's degree in Biblical Studies from Bernard Revel Graduate School and Rabbinic Ordination Semicha from Yeshiva University's RIETS. Rabbi Strauchler currently serves as the rabbi of Rinat, Israel in New Jersey, having previously served as Senior Rabbi in Shaarei Shomayim Congregation in Toronto, and previously before that as rabbi at Beit Chaverim Synagogue in Westport, Connecticut. Rabbi Strauchler is an associate editor of Tradition, the Journal of Orthodox Jewish Thought, and is currently a vice president of the RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America. Rabbi Strauchler, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. That last, everything else there was true except for the last note. I was a vice president of the RCA, but they shuttle you in and out, so I'm currently not
former vice president of the RCA.
And maybe at one point in the future, who knows?
Okay, excellent. Our topic today is Zionism, and just start off with a few questions. What is Zionism today? What does it mean when someone says, I'm a Zionist? And what is an anti-Zionist?
These are great questions about, and obviously things of great importance. There's a great deal of questions about the degree to which Zionism and Semitism are connected in forms of their anti-forms, as being an anti-Zionist, also being an anti-Semite, is something which is very much of the moment. And it really relates to is the degree to which Judaism is an element of belief or faith or religion like other religions, and the degree to which Judaism is actually a people which has a national story and a national destiny, and the degree to which a person sees Judaism as being a religion like other religions, then they might be able to differentiate between Zionism and Judaism. However, if a person has perhaps a more honest historical and theological base by which to examine what Judaism is, it becomes very clear that Judaism has elements of it that are perhaps like other religions, but also has elements which are not like other religions, that there's an element of peoplehood that is very much built into Judaism, and that there is within that people's story connection to a land, connection to a political identity that differentiates it from religion as spoken about in Western societies, which often is the equivalent of Christianity. And that is something which makes it very much of the moment to be able to explain and to express how it is that the Jews are not simply a religion, but the Jews really are a people that should be treated the way other peoples are treated, that they should treat themselves the way that other peoples are treated, to be able to recognize that they have national aspirations. Those aspirations are not fully fulfilled, but have gone a long way to fulfillment with the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. But I think that even on the level of internal Jewish thought, I think it's important to be able to differentiate between the core concept of a Jewish people and the specific manifestations of that at any point in history. Whether we would say that the kingdoms of the Maccabees were a full fulfillment of the Zionist idea, I think we can say that they were certainly a fulfillment. Were they the fulfillment of the Zionist idea? If we see Zionism as being this internal to Judaism concept of national aspirations, I'm not sure that the Maccabees were the final manifestation of that. And I think that that's likewise true for the State of Israel. The State of Israel is a primary fulfillment of Zionism today. But I think that we have to see that Judaism preceded the modern state of Israel, and Judaism contains within it elements that go beyond the modern state of Israel. But Israel is not the be-all and end-all of Judaism, even as we recognize that it is an essential part of what it means to be a Jew today, as it must, as it should, as God willing it will for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years.
Okay. So
did I fully answer your question? Were there elements there that I did not get to?
No, that's fine. Just going back to the initial question. So, what is Zionism today? Are we, there's been talk we're in a post-Zionistic era. Zionism is about bringing people to the land of Israel. Zionism is a political movement. We'll get to religious Zionism in a bit, but how would you define Zionism today?
I would define Zionism today above the moment. In other words, that there are those who would say that, you can follow philosophical trends and speak about how there was something which was post-Zionism going back a couple of years as sort of some conception of Israel after its founding that requires some rethinking of what it means to be a state which is somehow divorced from the Jewish narrative in some way. And likewise, you can have certain trends in anti-Zionism that exist in today as well, where you have certain trends of anti-Zionists who see a Judaism which can have religious components without political manifestations and this worldly, in which they would see some future messianic moment where the state, as it were, those aspirations are met beyond this worldly. And then you can also have those who are such universalists that they are anti-Zionists in the sense that there is some human identity that is above all nationalisms, in which Jewish nationalism is passed over the way that they would hope that all nationalisms are passed over. I say the John Lennon Imagine type anti-Zionist or anti-nationalist approach. And all these offerings are things that a modern Zionist or modern Zionism needs to respond to and have a course of action that describes how it is that they are able to answer the human questions of meaning, or the Jewish questions of meaning, of purpose and direction, in ways that are better respond to those questions than these competitors are suggesting. And in this moment, as a rabbi of a community in North America, in the United States, I think that the potential to see oneself as part of that Jewish narrative, that Jewish story, is something which is critical to our people, to how it is that we find meaning as Jews in this moment. And speaking on Shushan Purim, I'm not sure how this video is going to be shared, but speaking on Shushan Purim, I think that idea is something that is something that I had the opportunity of hearing my sister, Yael Goldfisher, address in my shul this past Shabbat, where she spoke about the Megillah as being something which justifies and legitimizes a role in the Jewish story for Jews in Shushan, and Jews, not just in Shushan, but around the world, that our lives matter to the Jewish story wherever we are, so long as we recognize that, the Revach B'Hatzalah Yamod LaYehudim is something that we are all responsible for in some way, that we are all a piece of that Jewish destiny that the book of Esther so taps into. And I would go so far as to suggest that every Jew needs to live that story, that Jewish destiny, and how it is that they conceive of themselves and their lives. That we're not simply Western individuals, no matter where we might live in the world, but that we are part of something which precedes us, part of an intergenerational connections, both as individual families, but also as communities. And that is as communities that have preceded us and that might live after us. And likewise, even beyond the level of communities, that of the people as a whole, that we are all carrying with us those stories in our persons, in our identities. And we have responsibility to those stories, both to our individual family stories, to our community stories, and to the Jewish people's story. And so no matter where we are in the world, we are ambassadors of that story, of that destiny. And that is, you might say, a broader definition of Zionism than linked to any specific political entity, even though it must use and must respond to the realities of whatever those political identities are. And so I would suggest that no matter where a person is in the world, by identifying as a Jew, by living as a Jew, by affiliating as a Jew, they push that story forward in a meaningful way. And there are ways to do that further that story. There are also ways to do that compromise that story. And that's something which is every Jew's responsibility to conceive of themselves as being more than their the physical body that they inhabit, but that they are carriers of Jewish destiny in one way or another.
Given that all Jews have that role and are part of the narrative of Jewish history, has Israel become the center of Jewish life spiritually? And what does that mean? And what role will diaspora Jewry have in the future direction of the Jewish people? Will it have a co-equal role, a secondary role?
There's a lot when you try to be a Navi, that to know the future. It's a dangerous place to go, and I did not do well in that course in Semicha. So
it's the stuff of all podcasts, the predictions and all that. But okay, yes. Your sense of what's happening now in terms of, Israel, diaspora, the relations, the role of each one.
I think there's something very ironic that's happened over the course of the past 6 months, and that is that despite the fact that the horrible terrorist attacks of October 7th took place in Israel, that it has displayed to Jews around the world just how connected they are to Israel, and how this upsurge in anti-Semitism speaks to the fact that Zionism and Judaism are so linked. And for a number of days after October 7th, I think there was a real sense that the security and the story of the Jews of diaspora was somehow compromised. And there's something very ironic that there was this great push towards reconceiving of the self in diaspora communities. I think this was more so in communities that are, you might say, live outside the bubble of intense Jewish life. And so those people who had really believed that their American friends were their friends, the secular Jews who really adopted the sense of that I can proudly be a Jew wherever I am, they started to question that in a certain way, where their friends basically said to them, they're the oppressed and the oppressors, and you guys are the oppressors. And that hurts, and that hurt them very deeply. In campuses, in certain corners of American life, world thought that these things were very, very difficult. And I think there was a pull back towards a certain achdut, chenu kol Beit Yisrael, that everyone felt. And you might even say that there was a certain window that opened for the possibility that the Jews of the diaspora, strong diaspora communities, might recognize that there's certain weaknesses there. Now that window closed, at least from what I'm seeing, but it may open up again. So I think that there is, if you speak about before October 7th, I think that all trends would have pointed towards a continuing Jewish life in diaspora opposite a growing Jewish life in Israel, and the two would live together the way that the Jews in Bavel, the Jews in Eretz Yisrael lived together in the times of the Talmud. That would have been a paradigm that we were inhabiting for, and look, we continue to inhabit. I think that's where we are right now, honestly. That is the status quo even now. But I think there was a spark. There was a moment after October 7th where other possibilities began to appear. And will that appear again? Sorry about that. I don't know. Maybe it will. I don't know if that's going to appear again.
Well, what was that window that you're referring to that opened that might have been closed? The window is take us to what's outside that window.
So the window is this sense. Well, let's go with the closed window first. The closed window is that we are so rooted in our strong communities, in the culture that we are a part of, that we truly belong in the societies of the diaspora. And we have our lives here. And why would we ever give up those lives and become immigrants and accept some unknown? That's the closed window. The open window is we were never going to actually belong here in the communities of the diaspora. That there's something that means that a Jew will be hated wherever a Jew goes. And that anti-Semitism is so rooted and impossible to ever be removed that ultimately whatever we build here is temporary. And the sooner we're able to design and come up with a plan by which we're able to lead these communities, the better off we're going to be. That's the window. And I think that for some, that window during those moments of unsurety, when we weren't exactly clear what was going on, that window opened up. You might say the metaphor of the frog inside the beaker, in which the water, when it jumps to a very high temperature very quickly, the frog jumps out of the water. So if you have a rolling boil and you throw a frog in, the frog's going to jump right out. But if the water heats up slowly, then that's not going to happen. And so I would suggest that in the days after October 7th, the water got hot very quickly. And there was a lot of frogs that were thinking about, you know what, maybe we better jump. But then eventually the water cooled down a little bit and the frogs got used to the water again. So the frogs are back in the water. So that's, you might say, another metaphor similar to the metaphor of the window, but that's what I'm describing.
Okay. So that closed window, that open window is that process is despite the fact that there continues to be an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic incidents. Despite that, and is that because, again, the argument always has been, as you said, Rabbi, first of all, it's very hard to move and uproot yourself from where you've been for, communities, life, etc. And is that also because there still remains the perception, yes, Jewish history is the story of exile and diaspora and movement from one place to another, but America has always been perceived, even from people in Israel, as different. America is a different phenomenon in world history. It's a kingdom of chesed, of kindness and righteousness. Has that perception changed?
I think that that's part of the lack of clarity that we all live with. There's I think there certainly is a a very deep love of America within my community, within American Jewry generally. And there was an essay published in The Atlantic, I think it's this month, on the end of the golden age of Jews in America, written by Franklin Foer. And that there's a certain question mark around that statement. Is that in fact the case? And we have to remember also that it's not just about the golden age of Jews in America, but the very definition of America is so tied up with the Jewish experience that it's also about what's America going to be, not just for Jews, but for anyone. And the idea of having inalienable rights, saying that all men are created equal, all people are created equal, and the belief that if we all work together, we can create something that we will all benefit from together, is something which is a beautiful idea, and it's an idea that it has much to speak about in terms of Jewish ideals. That there's a lot of not just Jewish benefit, but also Jewish investment in the very American story itself. And there are challenges to that story right now. And those stories are not just practical. This is not about, foreign governments trying to influence elections, but it's about an ideology that's taken over the campuses in America and around the world, which says that is the American ideal of somehow everyone being better if we all respect one another's humanity is in fact a cover for the exploitation of the weak. That the whole thing of this merit of an honest day's labor and being able to, create out of many forces a common identity in which we all respect one another is just a tool by which the powerful exploit the powerless. And that's a very powerful ideology. And it's an ideology that could break down a lot of the American norms, American rights, American values, American commitments, American culture can fall apart if that becomes the dominant philosophy beyond those campuses. And we're already seeing in the collapse of the campuses themselves that are going on right now, that's spread, that's leaving the campuses and going off into the society as a whole. And the Jews are the canary in the coal mine in so many ways. That's something that we're feeling here in the streets of Teaneck, when we have protesters who are empowered to say things and do things that are very un-American. And it's something that we as a Jewish community are responding to, not just in terms of practical political moves, but also very much aware of how it affects the soul of a community, how it affects the soul of a society, of a nation. And we are fighting that, but it's a very difficult enemy to fight because this ideology is just so prevalent in America and in the world. And so when it comes to the ability of a person to look at rising anti-Semitism, we have to recognize that Jews can handle a lot of anti-Semitism, and we have in the course of our history. And also we have to recognize that anti-Semitism doesn't go away when you move to Israel either. You may not experience it as directly when you are surrounded by Jews who are the society, who are the culture. But anti-Semitism is a part of the Jewish story. We as Jews have a purpose. And that purpose is something which is metaphysical, as if you are a person of faith. But even if you are a secular Jew, you see that there's something about the Jews within history that affect the societies of which they're a part. And when you come into a society, there's going to be a reaction against you when you try to bring forward your culture, your values, your sense of what Kadosh Baruch, what God asks of you. And that takes the form of anti-Semitism. And so when you try to change the world doesn't like to be changed. And there are going to be forces within that world that are going to fight you. And that's what it's been. And whether we live in the United States or whether we live anywhere, by virtue of our very identity, there's going to be a pushback. Now, as we conceive of ourselves, the expectation that anti-Semitism would have stopped or will somehow be fought, these Jewish organizations that have sold us on the idea of never again, I'm not sure just how attuned they are to the nature of what Judaism is. And to be able to appreciate that not only is Zionism a critical element of what Judaism is, that there is a counterforce to what Judaism represents within history, within the world, and that counterforce will be there as long as we're there. As long as we are doing what we're doing, there's going to be a counterforce against us.
And how is your particular community a religious community, religious Zionists? How are they viewing events? What questions are they coming to you what questions are they coming to you, and what is the state of religious Zionism today?
It's I'd say that primarily my people come to me as Jews with hearts, Jews who care about other Jews. And when they see what's happening in Israel, they come to me as religious Zionists who say, what are we doing? How can I live my life as if, I'm just, your average American just happens to be a Jew? That's not how it goes. They very much feel that they are of one body with the Jews in Israel, the Jews around the world. And if the Jews in Israel are suffering, they are suffering. Now,
Rabbi Strauchler, thank you so much for your time today and your words of inspiration, chizuk, and hope. And we just pray that the windows will all open up and the light will come in for all of us, if that's Amen. The right metaphor. Thank you so Amen. Much.
If you could, I'd like to include one additional piece, if you want to keep the recording going, as long as we can.
Yes, please.
And that is that as Jews who are not yet living in Israel, I think that it's important to have a conception of oneself as a Zionist that requires certain, might say, maaseh mitzvot. That as a North American Zionist, you can't just live in America and just happen to keep halacha. That there are certain things that we should be asking of ourselves as Zionists in this moment. The first of those ideas is that what goes on in Israel has to matter to us. We have to be able to plug into Israel, but as it is now. And that means knowing Hebrew and speaking Hebrew. That means being aware of the Torah of Israel, being aware of the culture of Israel, and that we have to do more in that way. I say further, it also requires of us to see ourselves in our presence in America as being ambassadors for Israel, to be advocates for Israel in terms of our conversations with Americans, Jewish and not Jewish, to be able to voice the concerns and the care for what goes on in Israel. My Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Yehuda Amital, used to always say that a Jew in America needs to open up the newspaper and look first at the news from Israel. That has to be on our minds at all times. And I would just say that it has to go even one step further than that, which is that we have to stand up when called upon. When there's a rally in Washington, we have to be there. And when there are opportunities for us to advocate for Israel, we must. We must write, we must call, we must be Jews who are aware of the needs of Israel. And then 3, and this is the big, hairy, scary idea, relates to where it is that we put our boots, where it is that we spend our days. And short of making aliyah, I think that there's something for us to speak about the life of a North American Jew, and that is to say that we should spend 10% of our days boots on the ground in Israel. And there are ways to do that after high school, before starting college. There are ways to do that in terms of where we choose to spend our vacation time. But there's nothing like being there. And even if we're not going to be able to quite move our lives there in full, there are places that we can and we must start plotting out our lives to make presence in Israel a more central part of how it is that we define our lives. And these are not halachic requirements, but these, I think, are very much Zionist requirements, that we have to not just define ourselves as Zionists by our two dat hazehuts, that we need to be able to define ourselves as Zionists by how it is that we live our lives. So again, Hebrew culture, Israeli culture. Number two, advocacy, wherever we are in the world. And number three, finding ways to live our lives with 10% of our time somehow being boots on the ground in Israel. I think that's something that all North American and world Jews need to be thinking about if we are to have a long-term Zionist identity outside of Israel.
Rabbi Strauchler, thank you so much again for your time. We appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Shukah to you.